A, E, 1, short.
Hi, I'm Seb Zel. I'm a producer and multi-instrumentalist and engineer. So I do music for visual media a bunch. I produce for a bunch of amazing rappers and singers. I have my own band called Dreamphone. Blind confidence or empowerment that is like, if you want something or you want to figure out how something works, you can just like figure it out. And this is At Some Time, Somewhere for AT1 Radio. I was born to a Cuban mother and a American Jewish father in wonderful sunny Miami Beach, Florida. And I lived there my whole life until I was 18. I'm trying to think of where to start. Like, I don't know. I feel like Miami has a particular ethos of it that is different than most other cities I've been. That is unique because I think partially its history is so young and it was like developed as a city so quickly. Shouts out that movie Cocaine Cowboys. You can cut that if you want. But it is an interesting story about the development of Miami. I think Miami has a really cool ethos that I would describe as being like very scrappy and very it's not that it's like so DIY in the conventional DIY sense of some of these like Portland, Brooklyn type places, but it is very like, I feel like people in Miami are all about like having various schemes to get what you want to do and various like, I think the people are hungry. I think it's like a hungry place, and I think that being around that ethos through most of my upbringing, but like especially in high school when I switched to a different school to like be in the music program, and that was when I first like, I don't know, I feel like I had always identified kind of predominantly as like a musician as soon as I realized I wasn't that good at skateboarding. But that was when I really like felt like the ethos of the city, as much as I'll rag on it forever for being like kind of lazy and like kind of like, I don't know, it is very, there's a sense that like if you want something, you can kind of just scheme your way to it. And I think that like has like been proven true through Miami and New York and just various years of being a musician and trying to just like make projects happen and make shows happen and like, oh man, there's this cool moment in the song. How did they do it? And I'm just like, grab the audio file, listen to it again, try one chord. Nope. Try another chord. Oh, maybe it's that one. Oh, but one note's not quite right. And just like, I don't know. There's like a certain like blind confidence or empowerment that is like, if you want something or you want to figure out how something works, you can just like figure it out. And I think that's like a really helpful kind of like empowering ethos. And like, you know, it doesn't, that mentality doesn't necessarily like solve any of those qualms for me. And I definitely still and probably always will wrestle with all that stuff of just like figuring out what the best moves are. But there's definitely a sense of, I feel like it translates to a bit of a healthy distrust of authority. In the sense that, like, a lot of people, my peers in music school I met, were really, I don't want to say dependent on their teachers for, like, validation, but I kind of, like, could tell from fairly young that if I wanted to, like, really devote my life to music and have it be a career and, like, work on projects that are inspiring me, like, the only way it works is if you, like, have some kind of schemed career that you networked and hustled and kind of like Frankensteined your way into having. And I feel like that's like kept me semi-sane through my years of like trying to figure it out. And like, I feel like if I had been, I did for a while have some kind of expectations that like, not that I was just going to get hired for a job and it would work out, but that like some external thing was going to like give me the life I wanted. But I think it's a very Miami mindset to be like, nah, I'm gonna grab it myself. And I feel like it's a very like telling of like a city of immigrants that Miami is. I mean, obviously my grandmother came over right at the beginning of the Cuban Revolution in 1960. And that was obviously like a huge migration that makes up so much of the social fabric of Miami. But there's Venezuelans and there's Argentinians and there's Brazilians and there's Italians and there's like, you know, and the Jews were there even before. Like, it just is like there's like a lack of old money that I think like is that like the people who have made it there have made it through some kind of scheming. Whether that is like starting a business or doing something more illicit or pursuing an art or whatever it is, there's not these like, there's not like Ivy League universities around. There's not like major, I don't know, I'm trying to think, the New York Stock Exchange or Hollywood and LA and like these, it's just younger but there is also like so much ostentatious wealth and I don't know. I think that for a lot of reasons, I'm kind of glad I don't live there now as an adult, but I am definitely grateful for its role in like the development of my character and like it's, I love living in New York and I kind of hope to live here till I die. But when you leave a cold New York, bleak January and you're on the Julia Tuttle in Miami, it's paradise, man. I went to NYU for classical music composition and music theory. And I kind of like informally also studied jazz and music technology. While I was there, I composed a bunch of crazy pieces for orchestras and chamber ensembles and percussion ensembles and choirs and things like that. Though my contemporary career, I graduated in 2018. My 2024 career does not look very much like that. But I do feel like a lot of those musical skills that I developed doing that type of music do translate. And I do still use most of my training most times I sit down to make music, but kind of like not directly. I feel like the skills that I developed kind of as my secondary musical pursuit, which was like producing and making beats and recordings, has now become my primary one. And these days, I work as a composer, scoring films and shorts and ads and stuff. I did an ad spot for the MLB a few months ago. A short film, or not a short film, a feature film I did called Playing Sam is going to be on Roku TV starting September 15th. Shouts out Ramon Pesante as the guy. And Andrew Garcia, who's another Miami, he's a filmmaker and director who is killing it now. But I got sidetracked. Anyway, so I do music for visual media a bunch. I produce for a bunch of amazing rappers and singers. I have my own band called Dreamphone. I operate a small but mighty studio in Ridgewood. And I play bass and guitar for people around New York and occasionally on tour. Yeah, it is my, like, I had my little ska band in high school. I had this kind of like big hip hop collective with a bunch of Japanese people that Yoichiro's met. That was like my college band, and then this is my post-college band, if that makes sense. So it didn't start as it started as us just making one song, and then we like made a few more, and then we did nothing for a while, and then at some point after we had already sort of been writing stuff for a while, we decided to like solidify it into a real project. So that was maybe, I think our first music came out in 2021. I think when I'm working with other people, most of what I'm trying to do is trying to give them like a springboard to kind of like insert their identity into the music. And I think that like a lot of contemporary listeners especially are like so receptive to individualism and so receptive to like a person's personality, a person's aesthetic taste. And like I think that in all music, in both all these areas of my life, it's like that's a thing that I kind of strive for. Whereas for the film, like in a film project, I'm trying to get the director's taste to come off. When I'm working with an artist, I'm trying to get the vocalist's taste to come off. So for Dreamphone, it is kind of like that, except I'm like turning the mirror around to myself a little bit and to Hattie and I together. And we have like such a good kind of like friendship and working dynamic that we really each take naturally to different and non-overlapping things. We have kind of like a yin and yang dynamic. And so I feel like a lot of our friendships and the conversations that we have and the music that we each do and don't like is conducive to us getting kind of vulnerable about our emotions and also just getting genuinely like curious and free. And I think Dreamphone is the project in my life that where I carve out the most space for like indulgent curiosity and just being like, it would be so sick if I put like 4 filters on the strings and did this. And like these things that I know when I'm working for like a vocalist are not like, I'm not necessarily as actively concerned with that as much as I am with the personality coming across. But for Dreamphone, like that is my personality, and it's Hattie's too. But like, you know, I'm the one writing a lot of the instrumentals, and I'm still like writing it with her and our dynamic in mind always. But it's still like I can be more like, I'm less concerned of whether like something, I don't want to say makes sense, but like has a brand, kind of like has like a like it having a certain personality or not, because I know that thus the all over the placeness and the expansive curiosity is the brand for Dreamphone. And like it's the only project in my life that like has that space. And like, yeah, that's one where that's the one where I like, you know, if I'm like, I place a beat with someone, we get the vocals in there, I do the mix, 2, 3, maybe 4 passes, it's done. For Dreamphone songs, I'm doing like 10 passes. And just because I want space to be like, what if it was different? What if we switched the order of the sections completely? What if we cut a section entirely? What if we pitched everything up an octave? Like, I don't know, like it's a space that I use to, that's where I'm like the most free in my creative life. Which is not to say I feel restricted in other areas of my creative life, but Dreamphone is the one where like that's a goal. And that's like, it wouldn't feel like Dreamphone if I was too focused on like the efficiency of my process or my workflow or getting songs done. When you're dealing with like people who are very explicitly industry focused and have certain like marketing and touring goals for their music, there are, not that I'm beholden to those, but like I'm respecting those goals and like I'm kind of working towards those. Whereas like, while I do have plenty of industry and career ambitions for Dreamphone, I like, first and foremost, it's important and it's valuable to me because it's like the most freely explorative. And I feel like by having that and showing people that, it a bit gives me credibility to then work out with artists. Because I feel like, I don't know, whenever I see someone who's really like, I feel like that's what personal projects are for a little bit. And that like, it shows that like, oh, this is not like a bland, this is a person who like has taste, who has opinions, who like makes choices, has style. I think that like, you know, in the same way that when you work with a rapper, you like wanna support their style and have their sense of style and their sensibilities, like you be audible when you listen to the song. I'm a bit trying to have this ethos of kind of like wild and free creativity be audible in Dreamphone. A moment where I feel like I experience defeat, or I almost like experience defeat in the sense that I experienced like the shattering of an illusion, was this when I finished my bachelor's at NYU, I was really dead set that I was going to go get a master's and possibly a doctorate in music composition. And I applied to all these graduate programs. I did these like super rigorous, you have to go and take music theory tests and like submit a composition portfolio. And I was at the time semi doing that. I was and am like deeply passionate about that kind of music because it kind of has this Dreamphone like ethos that is like so about being creative and explorative. But I guess for most of my life, I had this, not most of my life, but for maybe from adolescence until my early 20s, had this idea that if I pursue music in the most like cerebral, erudite way possible, that's like the safest way for me to have a career in it. And that's not true. That is, and then like that, it wasn't like one thing I got rejected for or whatever, or I got kicked out of a band and stuff. I mean, all those things have happened, but like, it was more this realization that like the model of myself as a composer and like what kind of careers existed for me and just what the music world looked like, that I was kind of told, or even like that was suggested that it exists in music school, does not exist anymore in the same way. And those careers prospects knowing that like most contemporary classical composers like are academics, and like is nothing to knock that at all, but it's not really what I wanted to do, and that was a bit really forced me to like step back and just like ask myself real questions about like what do I think is cool. Like what I remember when I was interviewing for a very prestigious music school master's program, I remember like walking around the campus and just being like, I would skip class if I was here, and like having to kind of like swallow that pill that like the way I envisioned my career going, or the way I envisioned myself like arriving at success, was not a real pathway, was difficult to swallow. And I'm lucky that it's interesting, the things that were secondary to me that I kind of like didn't prioritize as much because they weren't as serious, they were playing in bands with my friends and they were making beats, that have now become the basis of me having an actual career. But realizing that the things that I thought were valuable for professional reasons and the things that I thought were valuable for experiential reasons were actually reversed. So that was a big thing. That was like a seminal realization in my life at age 22 or 23. And then COVID happened right after. So, you know, a lot of reconsidering, but yeah. But I think that in terms of like how musicians and producers pay our bills and how money flows to the industry is going to change dramatically. And I'm kind of scared, but you can't fight it. After that experience and like hearing how convincing some of this stuff sounded, I was like, there's no boomerang about on this topic. Like, so who knows what's to come. I hope I can keep paying my rent. There's plenty of stuff that I hope to do. Dreamphone is working on a body of music that is way less poppy and way more like cinematic ballady, and a lot more like sensitive and emotional than anything we've done in the past, that I'm really, really excited about. That'll probably come out in 2025 at some point. I would like to tour a little more. I've done some like touring sideman instrumentalist work. I was, shouts out Zinadelphia, on a tour with this artist Zinadelphia last year, opening for this dude Teddy Swims. And those shows were like the hugest shows I've ever played, and like playing guitar solos for that many people is like one of the most GOAT experiences you can have, and was really like, I remember my like dad, who's like a rocker guy who framed records all over my house, came out to one of the shows and being like, oh cool, I'm playing in this 4,000 person room and my dad's here. And I don't know, I definitely would like to, some of the artists I produce for and people who I play on tour for, I would like to have that be the same.
A-E-1 short.
At Sometimes Somewhere is produced by Audio-Technica for AT1 Radio. It is recorded at AT1 Studio at Technica House, New York. Follow AT1 Radio and Audio-Technica USA on all social media platforms. Thanks for listening.